Today I want to share with you guys a few key info that will help you to decide which property to go for, and also secret strategies that will help you save hundreds of thousands of dollars in the future. So if you're in Singapore now and you're thinking of buying your first property or upgrading from your current property, then keep watching because I know you're going to learn so much from this video. Let's go. Hi, my name is Danny and I'm a licensed real estate agent in Singapore, and welcome to my channel. Before we go into the key info and strategies, let's look into the different type of housing available in Singapore. There are two main group of housing available in Singapore. One of them is called the public housing and the other one is called the private housing. Public housing are also known as government housing, and these are your HDBs, BTOs, or in the past we have the DBSS. Then for your private housing, we have the condo, apartments and landed houses. We also have this very special category of housing called executive condominium that starts off as a public housing, and over 10 years it evolved and transformed into private housing. So out of all these housing options, how do most people decide on which house to buy? Most people's decision is actually based on their affordability. And once you have determined your affordability, meaning to say what is the maximum price you can go for, then we will look at the location, your size requirement, and whether you want facilities, do you want to go for a condo. So I want to show you how the calculations for affordability looks like. So I built this sexy little Excel model that will help us to really look at it very quickly. So here on the Excel sheet, you can see there's a different client profile. So let's say we have a very young couple of age 30, and let's say they're both 30, and their combined income is, let's say, 6K. So they're earning $3,000 each. So you can see here, if they decide to go for a private property, the bank is going to loan them 580K. However, if they're going to go for HDB, the bank is going to loan them 360K. So why is there such a big difference in the loan amount for HDB and the private property? That is because MAS actually forces the banks to only consider 30% of your income when you're buying a HDB or EC from the developer. And this is called the mortgage servicing ratio. However, if you're going for a private property, the bank can recognize up to 55% of your income minus all your other monthly liabilities. And this is called the total debt servicing ratio. So in this scenario, let's go into to see how much CPF ordinary account savings they have and also how much grants they can get. So you can see here they have about 64K in combined CPF OA savings, and assuming they're not going to set aside any of the CPF OA, and also assuming that they are getting 50K CPF grant from the first timer grant, and enhanced housing grant you're getting here will be 30K actually for 6K income. Because enhanced housing grant is actually a tiered grant where they look at your income level and then your grant. So if your income is lower, then your grant is higher for the enhanced housing grant. So for their CPF grants, they can get 50K in the first timer grant because they're going for 4-room. Let's say they're going for 4-room HDB, and enhanced housing grant they can get here is 30K, and proximity grant they can get here is 20K, assuming they're buying within 4 km from their parents. So the total amount of CPF OA and grants they have here is 164K. So now let's go and see what is the maximum purchase price you can go for. So assuming they're buying a property at 380K with, let's say, 10K COV, they actually wouldn't have any loan shortfall. So that is good. And they will need about 19K in cash. So if this client have 19K in cash, then they can go for this purchase price. So now let's say they want to go for a slightly more higher price at 545K, and similarly with a 10K COV. As you know, now the market is crazy, right? So we have COV everywhere. So in this scenario, you can see they have a loan shortfall of about 95K, but because they have such a high amount of CPF OA and grants, they can use this to offset the loan shortfall. So after using their CPF OA and grants to pay for the loan shortfall, you can see they will actually wipe out all the CPF OA and grants. They would still have a net loan shortfall of about 20K. So in this scenario, the total cash they need to make this purchase is at 40K. So then we decide, okay, if this client have 40K in cash, then we can go ahead with this purchase. But if they do not have 40K in cash, then we maybe have to adjust the purchase price a little bit lower, maybe to 520K, assuming COV of 10K. Then in this scenario, they would need about 20K in cash. So if this client has 20k in cash, then they can go for it. So this is how we determine the max affordability. It is quite a complex calculation and back calculation and cross-checking. But once you have determined your affordability, then you can look into which are the housing options available. So in this example, this client can not go for anything more expensive than 540k. So using this knowledge, we'll go and look into locations, how big they want, investment potential, etc. So 540k in this market, you can probably go for a 4-room HDB in Punggol, Sengkang area. So once you have determined your affordability, you can actually make a very clear decision on whether you can go for HDB, EC or condos. So based on the example just now, with a combined income of about 6k, it is safe to say that they can only go for a resale HDB or BTO. For today, I'm just going to be focusing mainly on public housing, meaning your resale HDBs, BTOs and ECs. And now let's look into public housing options, CPF grants available, and let's try to compare between a BTO and also the resale flat. Public housings are a lot more affordable and is a much better option for a lot of young couples who don't have so much money saved up. But not everyone is eligible for public housing. Public housings are mainly reserved for Singapore citizen households, and there's a bunch of criteria and eligibility schemes that you have to fall under. So I'm going to leave a link to check your eligibility in the description box below. You can click on it and check whether you're eligible for HDB. So now let's look at the housing grants available for your resale flats and also your BTO. For your resale flats, there's a total of up to 160k grant available. So for most people, if you're buying a 4-room HDB or smaller, you can get up to 50k in a family grant. But if you're buying a 5-room HDB and bigger, you can only get 40k grant under the family grant scheme. There's also this grant called Enhanced CPF Housing Grant, which is actually based on your income level. So if your salary is, like the example just now, is about 6k, your Enhanced Housing Grant are available to you is at 30k. And if you're buying to live near your parents, which is defined as within 4 kilometers of your parents' house, then HDB will also give you 20k in your proximity grant. So based on the example just now, if the person is buying a 4-room or smaller HDB, he would be getting 50k in family grant, 30k in your Enhanced Housing Grant, and 20k in your proximity housing grant. So that's actually 50, 30, and 20. So that's actually 100k in your resale flat for the grants. But if this young couple, they decide to go for BTO instead, which housing grants are available to them? So in this scenario, there will be no family grant or proximity housing grant, and there will only be Enhanced Housing Grant. So in this scenario, they can only get 30k in the grants for BTO. But wait, BTOs are actually priced lower than your resale flats. But how much lower are BTO usually priced at? So to answer this question, why not let's look at a case study of a recent BTO launch in MacPherson and also a resale HDB in the same area. So you can see here the resale flats in the 18A to 18D Circuit Road, which is near MacPherson MRT. The 4-room HDBs there usually go for about 750k in 2021. In the same year, this BTO called MacPherson Weave, which is just beside this MacPherson residency, was launched. And a typical 4-room HDB there is launched at 555k. That's actually a price difference of almost 200k, BTO being about 200k cheaper. So although BTOs have a much lower grant, only Enhanced Grant, but with the price discount into the BTO of about 200k, the total subsidy hidden in the BTO is actually about 230k, whereas in your resale flat it's about 110k. So obviously, for any young couple, going for the BTO route is usually a better option because you have a lot of subsidies and also price discounted into your BTO. So let's compare again for BTO and resale flats. BTOs are obviously a much better choice if you want to go for financial benefit, because there's so much financial benefit into the BTO. But there's one very downside about BTO. That is actually a very long waiting time. So from the point of balloting to actually getting key to your BTO, usually it's about 4 to 5 years. I have a friend who actually applied for BTO in Woodleigh area. He applied for BTO 1 year after graduation, And only this year, 2022, he's getting a key to the BTO. That is actually a waiting time of about 2017 to 2022. That's actually about 5 years. Yeah, exactly 5 years. And you have to wait another 5 years from getting the key to your BTO, and that is called your minimum occupation period. So there's a total of 10 years waiting time to be able to finally sell off your BTO and maybe upgrade. For some of my friends, by the 6 or 7 year, their salaries have went up and they actually want to go into buying condominiums, but they can't because they're locked down by the MOP. So in this scenario, we have to really see if buying a BTO is really a better choice when we consider the time factor. But if you're a very young couple, maybe you just graduated from university or polytechnic, and you can wait and you can afford to wait this 4 to 5 years, then maybe that is a better choice for you. We have one more option in the public housing category, and that is your executive condominium. ECs are widely described as condominiums sold at discounted prices. So how does it actually work? So just like any other new condos developers, EC developers have to bid for the land from HDB. The only difference is that the reserve prices for the EC lands are set lower, so the private developers actually pay a lower price for the EC lands, which in turn they can sell the ECs at lower prices to retail buyers and investors like ourselves. So the question now is, how much lower are brand new ECs compared to brand new condos? So to answer this question, let's look at a case study of Provence Residence EC that was launched in 2021, and also Water Garden at Canberra, which is also launched at a later time of the same year. And both of these developments are located near Canberra MRT. So let's see how much the developers paid for the land for these two different developments. So you can see here, the condo land price was actually about 15% more expensive than the EC's land price. And the condo's selling price was about 26% higher than the EC's selling price. A typical 3-bedder at Water Gardens of about 950 square feet actually went for 1.40 mil, whereas a similar size 3-bedder in Provence Residence went for 1.15 mil. That is actually a price difference of about 250k. And there's also a housing subsidy of up to 30k for EC. So now that we have seen the financial benefits and subsidies in EC, resale HDBs and BTOs, we can actually see that the financial benefits in the EC is the highest, followed by BTO and then resale HDB. So although the financial benefit of the EC is the highest, in reality not many people can actually go for EC. A lot of young couples would not have sufficient funding for the down payment to actually go and buy an EC as their first property. So in reality, EC is more applicable for HDB upgraders who have already owned the HDB for a few years and they have saved up enough money, and also when they sell off their HDB, there will be a substantial amount from their CPF and cash proceeds, which they can in turn use it to pay for the down payment of the EC. Now that we have talked about all the housing benefits in the HDBs and BTOs and EC, let's look at some of the key important things that you should know before making any decision. So for every Singaporean, you can only take a maximum of 2 housing subsidies in your lifetime. So buying a resale HDB with a CPF grant is considered as one count, or if you're buying a BTO with or without grant, that's also considered as one count. And if you're buying an EC, that's also considered as one count. So it is going to be very important to strategize when or should you take the housing benefits. For example, if you're buying a resale HDB and you can only get a grant of about 20k, in this kind of scenario, maybe it might be better if you don't take the grant and just buy the resale HDB without any grants. So this way, you are not using up any of your housing benefit account, and you can reserve your housing benefit for the future, maybe to go for a BTO or to go for an EC. There's also a bit of a misconception that people think that if you take any grant, you need to repay to the government when you sell off the property. So that's not really true. If you take any grant, you don't have to actually repay the government anything when you sell off the property. But there's this thing called resale levy, which you have to pay the government when you sell off your property and buy another subsidized housing. So for example, you bought a BTO, let's say a 4-room BTO, and you went and buy a private condominium. In this scenario, do you need to pay resale levy? The answer is no. However, if you sold off your 4-room BTO and buy an EC, you have to pay a resale levy of 40k. So the purpose of resale levy is to actually reduce the subsidy amount in your next subsidized housing. Okay, now I'm going to tell you about a secret strategy that will save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in future when you buy your second property. So you know there's this thing called ABSD, right? So ABSD stands for what? Additional Buyer Stamp Duty. So assuming you already own a HDB or BTO, let's say a 5-room BTO, and you have stayed there for 10 years and you have worked there for 10 years, and now you're thinking of buying another property, a second property for investment. So in this scenario, if you go and buy another investment property, the government is going to charge you additional buyer stamp duty of 17%. So a condo nowadays is easily about 1 mil, maybe 1.5 mil. So a 17% on a 1.5 mil is going to be about 255K of tax that you have to give to the government in cash or CPF. And you cannot take a loan for that, and this is not refundable, it's just tax to the government. So how can you save on this future ABSD if you're going to buy a second property for investment? You can do so by planning ahead right now on your ownership structure of your HDB, ECs or BTO. So when you're buying a BTO, HDB or EC, you have to choose the manner of holding for the property. So a lot of couples and husband and wife, they actually choose the manner of holding to be joint tenancy, with the husband and wife equally owning the property. So in this scenario, both the husband and wife will have a property count of 1 each, although they both own one property. So here's a trick. You can choose to only use one name to be the owner of the HDB, EC or BTO, and the other name you don't put it as an owner, you put it as an essential occupier. So for example, you bought a BTO, you only use your husband's name to be the main applicant or owner, then the wife's name, you put it as an essential occupier. So 5 years later, once you have reached MOP for your HDB, the wife who's an essential occupier can actually go and buy another private property without any ABSD, and you're saving 17% on your next condo purchase, which can easily be 250K or 300-400K. But here's the disclaimer. If you're only going to use one name to buy the HDB, BTO or EC, the bank will only recognize this one person's name or one person's income and age to get the loan. So your loan amount will be substantially lower if, let's say, you need both the incomes to get the loan amount that you want. Another point to take note is that if you're only using one name to buy the BTO, HDB or EC, you can also only use that person's CPF OA to pay for the house. So if your income and your CPF OA saving is not enough to get the loan and also down payment required, then in this scenario, maybe it might be better off to use two names. So it is very important to talk to a professional to calculate all this for you before you make the decision to whether to use one name or two names. After doing the calculations and you can afford to only use one name, then go for it, because you will be saving tons of money in the future. So now we have come to the end of the video, and thank you so much for watching to the end. Before I go, I just want to give a quick advice to all you guys out there who are buying your property. One is, don't be too fixated on a location. I've met many clients who came and tell me, hey Danny, I only want to buy in Jurong West because my mom used to stay there, or because I used to stay there, I'm very familiar with the area. Or I only want to buy in Bishan because I grew up there and I'm very familiar with the area. I'm going to tell you something that might change your mind. Be it Bishan, Jurong West, or Loyang, Pasir Ris, etc. Everywhere we have the same thing. There's an NTUC, or there's a supermarket, there are schools, MRT, right? It's really getting very accessible. So don't let location be the primary factor to restrict your choices. And buy a home that actually makes you happy, and not purely based on investment potential or any other thing. Because a home is a home where you will be there for many years building beautiful memories. Also, don't prioritize too much in buying a property near your workplace or office, unless you're very, very sure you're going to be working at that place for a long time. But in reality, for most people, things change. Like you will probably get a new job, your work location is going to change. These are very likely things. So maybe it's good not to put too much emphasis on buying near your workplace. Another very important thing is that sometimes you see properties on the market that are so cheap and you just go straight into it and make a rash decision. Don't do that also. Cheap doesn't always mean good. Always look at the lease remaining and try to factor that into the pricing strategy. If a property don't have so much lease remaining, usually the golden benchmark we use is that if the property has less than 65 years lease remaining, then we don't really recommend you to go for it unless it meets your space requirement and your budget. Then maybe it still makes sense. and also for private property buyers, they usually will just want to go for freehold. But in reality, freehold isn't always better than 99 years. There are some freehold properties I've seen that are so cheap, but they are cheap for a reason. They are so run down and everything is falling apart, and the next buyer or the new owner probably have to spend a lot of money to pay for your management and sinking fund to upkeep the property. So with that, I've come to the end of the video, and I really hope you enjoyed our session here today. If you find this video useful, please like and share this video on your social and subscribe to my channel for more content in the future. I'll see you again soon. Ciao.